She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just stood there, frozen, humiliated, while the gate agent barked, "Economy is that way." Ava Moreland, dressed in a plain cotton dress, held a first-class ticket in one hand and her dignity in the other. But that didn't matter. Not to the crowd watching her like a zoo animal. Not to the flight attendant smirking at her like she was filth. What no one knew, what they would soon learn, is that the woman they tried to erase owned the sky they flew in, and one phone call would bring it all crashing down. Ava Moreland walked toward Gate 14 with a quiet, practiced grace. The terminal bustled with early morning tension. Business travelers glued to screens, families juggling luggage and snacks, the soft clink of high heels echoing across polished floors. Ava wore simple ballet flats. A long cream cotton dress skimmed her ankles, her dark skin radiant under minimal makeup. Her thick curls were pulled back into a low bun, and around her neck hung a delicate chain with a tiny charm, a pine tree, symbol of endurance and dignity, given by her grandmother on her 18th birthday. She didn't look like she belonged in first class. Not to most eyes, anyway. No designer suitcase, no oversized sunglasses, no monogrammed tote. Just a quiet presence, a worn leather bag on her shoulder, and a first-class boarding pass neatly held between two fingers. As she approached the gate, the flight attendant standing by the entrance arched one manicured brow. Blonde, statuesque, wrapped in a crisp navy uniform that looked tailored from power itself. Chelsea Miller. She exuded authority the way some women wore perfume. Unmistakable. Heavy. A little suffocating. Ava offered a polite smile. "Good morning." Chelsea didn't return it. She looked Ava up and down, once, twice, lingering on her shoes, her hair, the faded strap of her leather bag. "And where do you think you're going?" Chelsea asked, not unkindly, but loudly, loud enough to make heads turn. Ava lifted her boarding pass. "First class, 1A." Chelsea didn't take the ticket. Instead, she crossed her arms, her mouth tightening into a smirk. "Miss, this line is for first-class passengers only. Economy is boarding at Gate 15. A hush rippled through the nearby travelers. A few business-class passengers paused mid-step, earbuds half dangling, attention drawn like moths to discomfort. Ava blinked once. Her voice, always low and measured, didn't waver. "Yes, I'm flying first class. That's my seat." Chelsea let out a soft, condescending laugh, the kind that says more than words ever could. "I don't think so," she said. "I'm not sure how you got this pass, but I need to ask you to step aside and wait. This area is for our elite members." Someone behind Ava cleared their throat, impatient. She stepped out of the way automatically. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Ava said, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. This is my ticket. I'm sure if you scan it, you'll see." Chelsea took a step forward, voice growing sharper. "Ma'am, we've had issues with misbookings before. Security will be here shortly. Please don't make this harder." A murmur spread through the line. Phones came out, not overtly, but enough to catch flickers of raised screens and the faint sound of video recordings starting. A businessman nearby shook his head and whispered, "Always something at LAX." A woman in a white pantsuit frowned but said nothing. Ava's hand tightened around the boarding pass. Her voice stayed calm. "There must be a misunderstanding. You're holding up the line," Chelsea snapped. "If you don't step back, I'll have to call for removal." And there it was, the threat. The words echoed in Ava's ears like a slap, not because they were loud or cruel, but because she had heard them before, in different ways, in different places, always wrapped in policy or procedure, always polite, always poisonous. For a moment, Ava said nothing. Her shoulders rose with a quiet inhale. Then, with a barest nod, she stepped aside. "I'm sorry," she said. The line moved. Passengers continued boarding, some giving Ava a sideways glance, others ignoring her entirely. A few stared longer than they should have, lips pursed, curiosity outweighing empathy. Chelsea turned her attention back to the scanner as if nothing had happened, tapping on the screen with a crisp, satisfied rhythm. Ava took 3 slow steps backward, careful not to trip over her own silence. Inside, her chest burned. She felt her fingers tremble around the boarding pass, but she didn't drop it. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Her grandmother's voice echoed faintly in her head. They will try to make you small. Do not shrink. Let them struggle with your stillness. A young gate agent, barely 20, looked over from the corner with a flicker of confusion. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but then caught Chelsea's glare and quickly looked away. Ava closed her eyes for half a second. She could walk away. She had done it before. Taken the insult, tucked it into her pocket like a bitter receipt, and left. But this time, something was different. Maybe it was the flash of a phone camera catching her discomfort. Maybe it was the two teenagers laughing and pointing like it was a joke. Maybe it was just the photo she kept tucked inside her wallet. Her grandmother in a Sunday dress, standing in front of a courthouse in 1965, fist raised. Maybe Ava was just tired. She opened her eyes, and this time, she didn't walk away. She did not speak. She did not protest. She simply stood, silent, still. The woman no one wanted to see, but no one could look away from. Chelsea returned from the jet bridge, her heels clacking confidently against the tile. A security guard followed closely behind her, clipboard in hand. Ava hadn't moved. She stood quietly at the edge of the gate, first-class ticket still in her hand, shoulders straight. "She's the one," Chelsea said, nodding toward Ava. "Claims she's in 1A. The guard blinked, hesitated. "You scanned her pass yet?" Chelsea waved him off. "Didn't need to. Look at her." It wasn't said out loud, but it didn't have to be. The implication sat heavy in the air. Ava stepped forward, calmly offering her boarding pass. The guard took it. His eyes flicked between the printed seat, 1A, and her face. Then he looked back at Chelsea. "This is legit," he said. "She's in first class." Chelsea's eyes narrowed. "Let me check her bag." The guard frowned. "There's no cause for—" "She's acting suspicious," Chelsea cut in. "Could be fraud. You want me to explain this to TSA if she's hiding something?" Before the guard could object, Chelsea reached out and snatched the leather bag from Ava's shoulder. "Excuse me," Ava said, sharply, but it was too late. Chelsea unzipped the bag with a flourish, rummaging like she was looking for contraband. She pulled out a wallet, a worn paperback, a pen, a silk scarf, and then a small leather case. It fell open in her hand, and a photograph fluttered to the floor. It landed face up. Ava's breath caught. It was a black and white photo. A young black woman, dignified, radiant, stood on the steps of a courthouse, holding a protest sign with "Vote" painted in thick brushstrokes. A little girl stood beside her, clutching her hand. The woman smiled softly. The girl beamed. It was Ava and her grandmother. Chelsea bent to pick it up, then paused. Her heel hovered over the photo for just a moment too long. Not touching, but close enough to make Ava's blood freeze. Ava dropped to one knee and scooped it up herself. There was a brief silence, then a laugh from somewhere behind her. Ava turned. A teenager in a varsity jacket was holding up his phone, recording, smirking. "Yo," he whispered to his friend. "This is gold. They're treating her like she's a threat or something. Can't wait to post this." The friend giggled. Hashtag first class faker. Chelsea didn't notice. She had turned away, muttering about procedure. The guard shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am," he said to Ava, quieter now. "I think you're good to go. I'm sorry about—" Ava didn't answer. She was too busy tucking the photo gently back into the case, her hands trembling now, not with fear, but with shame. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because, once again, she had been forced to prove she didn't belong in someone else's story. The silence was louder now. People were watching. No one said anything, but they watched. Some curious, some judgmental, some pretending not to see at all. A woman in a power suit adjusted her sunglasses and looked away. A man with a Bluetooth earpiece kept his eyes on his tablet but hadn't turned the page in minutes. Even the gate agent beside Chelsea looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Ava stood up slowly. Her movements were gentle, controlled, like someone handling glass. She adjusted her dress, slid the bag strap back onto her shoulder. Her eyes were dry, but just barely. "Am I allowed to board now?" she asked. Chelsea didn't meet her eyes. "The door's open." The security guard stepped aside. Ava walked toward the jet bridge without looking back. As she passed the crowd, the silence followed her like a storm cloud. No one offered a smile. No one said a word. Behind her, the teen snickered. "Yo, post it with Welcome to America Airlines. That'll go viral." And it did. By the time Ava reached her seat, 1A, a window seat with plush cream leather and a folded blanket placed just so, the video had been posted to 3 different social media platforms. The caption varied slightly each time, but the message was the same. Lady tries to sneak into first class and gets caught. The views ticked upward by the second. Ava didn't know it yet, but the world outside was already watching her. She sank into the seat, her body rigid against the comfort it offered. The leather was cool beneath her, the scent of eucalyptus and citrus wafting from the pre-sanitized surfaces. She buckled her belt with mechanical precision. Across the aisle, a middle-aged couple glanced at her, then quickly looked away. The man pulled out a tablet. The woman sipped from her champagne. Neither smiled. Ava reached into her bag again, pulled out the photo, smoothed it with her thumb. Her grandmother, Evelyn Moreland, had marched in Selma, had been arrested in Birmingham, had bled on American soil so her granddaughter could sit in any damn seat she chose. Evelyn had built Moreland Equity from nothing, started with a lending co-op in the basement of her church, built it into a billion-dollar investment firm. She had served on 3 presidential commissions. She had taught Ava how to walk into rooms that hated her and leave with them changed. But Evelyn had also taught her something else. You don't win by shouting. You win by staying standing when they try to make you kneel. Ava was standing, but inside, she was bleeding. She tucked the photo away again, then closed her eyes. Somewhere outside, someone was laughing over a video that turned her pain into punchlines. Somewhere else, someone was reading the comments. Somewhere, someone she'd never met was deciding whether she looked too calm to be a victim. But here, in this narrow space between privilege and prejudice, Ava was just trying to breathe. She didn't want revenge. Not yet. What she wanted, what she needed, was something far quieter, something colder, something that didn't come in the form of yelling or slapping phones out of hands or screaming for justice. She wanted the system to feel what she felt. She wanted the foundations to shift. She opened her eyes, looked out the window, and began to plan. The hum of the cabin dimmed behind her ears. Ava sat in silence, her head resting against the cool window pane, though her eyes didn't focus on the landscape outside. Clouds drifted somewhere beyond the glass, but all she could see was memory, sharp, uninvited, and painful. She was 10 again, standing in a boutique shoe store in Atlanta, barefoot on the cold tile, her grandmother beside her, hand firm on her shoulder, a white saleswoman pointing at them and saying, "Those heels are not for girls like her," loud enough for everyone to hear. She meant it politely, her grandmother had whispered after they left, though her voice cracked like porcelain. Later that night, Ava had cried alone, clutching her sneakers and wondering what part of her made her not 4. There were other memories. Being watched in department stores, teachers mistaking her for a scholarship kid even when her last name was on the school's donor wall, dates where she'd show up and the hostess would ask if she was the assistant. And through it all, Evelyn Moreland had been a fortress. "You are not here to be liked," she used to say. "You're here to leave a dent so deep they have to rewrite the damn blueprint." But it was that one quote, told over tea and shortbread on a quiet Sunday morning, that echoed in Ava's bones now. Don't raise your voice, raise your power. Ava reached into her bag, her fingers finding the soft interior pocket of her wallet. Nestled between receipts and boarding documents was a folded note, faded blue ink on yellow parchment, slightly frayed at the edges. She unfolded it with care. It was her grandmother's handwriting, fluid and elegant, looped in long cursive strokes that felt like a whisper from the past. "This is your test. Don't fail it with silence. Don't pass it with noise. Pass it with presence." Ava's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't even remembered putting it in this bag. It was something Evelyn had slipped into her palm just days before she passed, after the board had voted Ava as interim CEO of Moreland Equity. It had been a moment of pride and unbearable weight. She had read the note a dozen times before, but never had it felt as cutting, as raw, as immediate as it did now. This wasn't about Chelsea, not really. It wasn't about first class or leather seats or overpriced champagne. It was about power, about how people wield it when they think no one's watching, about what you do when you're not just the target, but the example. She had almost walked away. Ava stared at the open door of the plane, half expecting someone to tell her she was still unwelcome, but no one came. The flight attendants had retreated into their assigned corners. Chelsea, likely embarrassed or perhaps even emboldened, was nowhere in sight. Ava reached for her seatbelt, then paused. She unbuckled, stood, walked down the aisle, her flat soundless against the carpet. A few heads turned. Some passengers narrowed their eyes, worried maybe she'd cause a scene. Others kept sipping their drinks, pretending not to see. She stepped off the plane, back into the jet bridge. The gate was still crowded with people waiting to board. Chelsea stood near the counter, whispering to another crew member. She didn't see Ava at first, but when she did, her eyes narrowed. "Something wrong, miss?" she asked, voice laced with irritation. Ava didn't answer. She walked past her, calmly, toward the terminal seats just beyond the gate. She sat. She sat for a full minute. No movement, no reaction. Let them wonder, she thought. In front of her, travelers hustled by, dragging roller bags and sipping overpriced coffee. A man sneezed. A baby cried. A gate agent called for Group 4 to board at Gate 13. Ava just sat. This is your test. She reached for her phone. Not to post, not to record. She opened her contacts and scrolled to the very bottom, past her team, her investors, her board members, to a single name, Turner Ops Response. She didn't call. Not yet. Her fingers hovered over the button, then stopped. She looked up. Across from her, a little black girl was staring. Probably 7, maybe 8. Big glasses, yellow hoodie. Curls bouncing as she clutched her mother's hand. The girl looked from Ava's face to the first-class gate, to Ava's bag, then back again. Ava gave her a small smile. The girl smiled back. Then she turned and disappeared into the crowd. Ava stood, walked back toward the gate. This time, no one tried to stop her. Chelsea watched, lips pursed, but said nothing. The security guard from earlier gave a curt nod. The young gate agent, the one who had looked uneasy before, whispered, "I'm sorry." So soft it was almost imagined. Ava didn't respond. She boarded. She walked back to seat 1A, sat down, buckled in. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. But in the space behind her eyes, something had changed. She had decided. There would be no yelling, no threats, no scene. She would do what Morelands always did. She would move the ground beneath them. The hush in first class was louder than the roar of any jet engine. As Ava stepped back into the cabin, there was a shift. Subtle, but undeniable. Not in the lighting or the temperature, but in the air itself. A ripple of awareness passed through the seated passengers, as if the atmosphere had decided to hold its breath. She made no eye contact. Her gait was unhurried, measured. Her cotton dress, now slightly wrinkled from the previous commotion, moved softly with each step. The leather strap of her bag creaked gently as she adjusted it over her shoulder. Her face gave nothing away, but the silence gave her everything. She could feel it. The eyes watching from behind glossy magazines, the glances traded across aisles, the uneasy rustle of judgment meeting the unexpected. She reached seat 1A and paused. Calmly, she placed her bag down, smoothed the front of her dress, and sat. She didn't settle into the seat, not just yet. Instead, she turned slightly and unzipped a side pocket of her bag. Inside, tucked in a velvet sleeve, was a small black card case, sleek, unbranded, the kind only those who understood true wealth would recognize. Not loud, not gaudy. Pure, dense quality that didn't beg to be seen, because its existence was enough. She took it out, placed it gently on her lap. Her fingers, long and steady, slid the magnetic clasp open with a soft click. Then, with a quiet exhale, she opened it. The overhead light caught the surface inside, reflected off a deeply embossed emblem, a towering pine tree circled by 12 stars, the mark of Moreland equity. Those who knew, knew. Those who didn't were about to. The cabin remained silent, but the energy shifted. Directly across the aisle, A man closed his laptop mid-sentence. His hand hovered above his keyboard as his eyes fixed on the black case in Ava's lap. He blinked once, twice, then slowly, he sat back. 3 rows down, a woman holding a glass of Prosecco lowered it mid-sip. The stemware tilted slightly in her grasp, forgotten. And then came the twist. From seat 1C across the aisle came a soft rustle of movement. An elderly white man, gray hair combed meticulously, sharp linen suit, gold cufflinks that glimmered without shouting, rose from his seat. He didn't say a word, didn't clear his throat or ask for help. He stood, walked the 1 step forward, and paused in the aisle, facing Ava. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then, in a gesture so deliberate it silenced even the rustle of the air vents, he bowed his head. Not dramatically, not performatively, just a slow, precise, respectful inclination. A nod, not of apology, but of recognition. Ava looked up. Their eyes met. He didn't smile. Neither did she. It wasn't a moment of reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. It was power seeing power. Then he sat back down, adjusted his tie, folded his hands. The rest of the cabin? Confused, intrigued, unsettled. What had just happened? Some of them whispered. One woman leaned over to her husband, murmuring, "Is she famous?" The man beside her shook his head. "I don't think so. But did you see that card?" A man in a navy blazer pulled out his phone, discreetly opened a browser, and typed, "Moreland Tree logo." Within seconds, his face turned pale. "Babe," he whispered to the woman next to him. "She's with Moreland Equity." That name alone was a detonator. Not everyone in the cabin recognized it. But those who did straightened in their seats, crossed their legs differently, silenced their children. Moreland Equity wasn't just a firm, it was the firm. A conglomerate so quietly influential, it made kings and broke nations. Its investments threaded through every major airline, pharmaceutical company, media empire. Its stake in AirVantage alone was enough to sway entire boardroom decisions. And Ava Moreland, she wasn't a spokesperson. She wasn't an executive. She was the name. A few passengers began checking their feeds. One woman tapped her assistant frantically. "Get me the incident log at gate 14. Now." Another man muttered, "She's the one from the video. That clip is already trending." Ava didn't react to any of it. She didn't need to. Her message had been delivered without a word. The man in 1C, the one who bowed, spoke only once, a whisper to himself as he gazed out the window. "God help Chelsea Miller." He didn't say it with cruelty. He said it like someone who had seen empires fall. Meanwhile, Chelsea herself was oblivious, still standing by the cockpit, fixing her hair in the reflection of a coffee pot, trying to reclaim composure. She hadn't returned to first class since Ava reboarded. Some part of her must have sensed a shift. But not this, not yet. Back in 1A, Ava closed the card case. She placed it gently back into her bag, zipped the pocket closed, and reclined her seat slightly. Only then did she let herself breathe. Not deeply, but enough. Around her, the cabin had become a theater of whispered recalculations. Every passenger was reevaluating what they had seen, what they had assumed, what they had laughed at or ignored. Some were embarrassed, some were scared, some still didn't get it. But all of them knew something had changed. Not because Ava had told them, but because the room had turned toward her, not in pity or suspicion or contempt, but in awe. Ava waited until the plane had reached cruising altitude. She waited through the flight attendant's welcome announcement, the subtle ding of the seatbelt sign, the ritualistic passing of hot towels and sparkling water. She waited while Chelsea finally returned to the cabin, her steps measured, her smile plastic, her eyes avoiding 1A with the skill of a trained coward. Then, and only then, Ava reached into her bag. Her movements were quiet, precise. From the same pocket that held her embossed card case, she pulled out a slim black smartphone. It was smaller than most modern models, sleek, matte, unbranded. It didn't vibrate. It didn't ring. It simply existed. Until it didn't. She tapped once. The screen came to life with a series of icons that looked nothing like any standard interface. There was no email app, no social feed, no browser. Just one button in the center, Code Black. She didn't hesitate. She pressed it. The screen dimmed, then blinked. A message appeared. Connect to executive line. Ava double-tapped. The call initiated, not with a ring, but a secure tone, soft and low, like a heartbeat underwater. A moment later, a voice answered. Confirm identity. Ava spoke just 4 words. Bring the boardroom online. Silence. Then a digital chime. Another voice, clear, crisp, male, answered. Code Black confirmed. Executing secure relay. Stand by for full quorum. Ava set the phone down gently on her tray table and folded her hands. Across the aisle, a businessman turned his head slightly. He hadn't heard what she said, but something about the stillness in her posture unnerved him. She didn't check the in-flight menu. She didn't read a book. She simply stared at the blank phone screen as if the sky itself had begun to crack behind it. 3 minutes later, the screen lit again. 12 video windows opened simultaneously, each displaying a grainy live feed of a person in a boardroom, home office, or private jet. Some were blurred intentionally. Others wore suits, pearls, robes. One man sat behind the AirVantage logo. The woman in the center leaned forward. Her name flashed on screen. Ellen Thorne, CFO, Moreland Equity. Miss Moreland, she said, voice tight. We received the alert. Are you safe? Yes, Ava replied simply. You're in flight? Yes. There was a pause. Then Ellen's eyes shifted, slightly off camera. She was reading something. We also saw the video, she added. Gate 14, LAX. Another board member, a man with a European accent, leaned forward. Is this as serious as it looks? Ava's face did not move. Worse. Have you spoken to AirVantage leadership? No, I spoke to Chelsea Miller. Someone on the call swore under their breath. Another muttered, She still works there? Ellen nodded once. Miss Moreland, are you invoking shareholder action? Ava answered without blinking, effective immediately. Across the cabin, the businessman who had been watching her turned pale. He didn't know what she was saying, but he knew what she was saying. Ava picked up the phone again, brought it to her ear. Her voice this time was meant to be heard, soft but unmistakable. This is a formal notification to initiate Code Black. Across the 12 video feeds, heads turned, brows furrowed, pens clicked. Understood, said Ellen. We'll begin liquidation at opening bell. No press yet? Ava added. Let them feel it first. Of course. She tapped the screen. Call ended. Phone dark. Silence. Then, motion. From across the aisle, the businessman, early 40s, clean-cut, navy blazer, gold watch, abruptly rose from his seat. He fumbled with his laptop, his phone, his coffee. He muttered something to the flight attendant, Chelsea, but she wasn't listening, because her eyes were now on Ava, and Ava was looking back. The recognition hit Chelsea like a slap. Her spine straightened, her smile faltered. She blinked, twice, then once more for good measure. And then she turned and walked away. No apology, no explanation, just retreat. Ava didn't move. The businessman returned, laptop clutched like a weapon, phone screen open to a trading app. He was typing furiously, the whites of his eyes showing more with every new refresh. He was a portfolio manager. He knew what Code Black meant. And if she'd called it from the air? If she'd triggered it in flight? From 1A, from that phone? This wasn't a bad PR moment. This was a market-shaking event. Someone behind him whispered, Hey, who is she? He didn't answer, because in that moment his own company's stock dropped 1.6%, because AirVantage's pre-market numbers froze, because Moreland Equity had just moved. And when they moved, everything else trembled. Ava picked up her water, took a sip, didn't flinch. To the rest of the cabin, it still looked like she was just a quiet woman with great posture and a silent stare. To those watching closely, she had just pulled the first thread out of a system sewn with arrogance and stitched with silence. The unraveling had begun. Blake Harlan was halfway through a whiskey and an overconfident email when he saw it. He had a talent for catching quiet tremors. That's what made him one of the youngest senior traders at his hedge fund, Valor Ridge Capital. He could feel panic before it showed up in the numbers. His instincts were rarely wrong. He was seated in business class, 3F, 2 rows behind the curtain separating him from first class. Most of the time, that curtain was metaphorical, symbolic. Today, it felt like a blast door between a harmless mistake and a financial catastrophe. He hadn't been paying attention at first. Not when the murmurs started. Not when the woman with a calm face and cotton dress took her seat. Not when the flight attendant had flinched and fled like a child caught stealing cookies. But then, he heard it. The name. Moreland. It hadn't been said loudly, just a whisper from a nearby passenger. But to Blake, it rang louder than any alarm. He sat up straight, blinked once, rewound the moment in his head. Moreland? The Moreland. He pulled out his phone, one hand still hovering over his drink. Fingers tapped with speed and surgical precision. He bypassed the airline Wi-Fi limitations with a VPN tunnel, one of the little tricks he'd built for himself on long flights. His screen came to life, and there it was. $Avent AirVantage Airlines. Volume spike, pre-market activity, volatile. But what chilled him wasn't the numbers. It was the whispers. Across his encrypted finance feed, a single sentence was beginning to appear on multiple message boards. Moreland signal activated, code black. Blake's heart skipped. He checked the source. 3 different internal trading chats he followed religiously. Anonymous handles, but trusted. High-level institutional chatter. All of them saying the same thing. Something had been triggered mid-flight. Triggered from inside the plane. He looked up toward first class. He couldn't see her, just the edge of her seat. But in that moment, he knew. She wasn't just some irritated VIP. She wasn't just someone pulling rank over a gate agent's poor judgment. She was leveraging. No, she was executing. Blake had seen it happen before, in boardrooms and closed-door negotiations, but never this clean, never this quiet, never in real time. He opened his trading app. His hand hovered. If Moreland equity was liquidating, or worse, signaling a vote of no confidence, AirVantage stock would spiral. And if he moved fast enough, he didn't even blink. He dumped his firm's full AV&T holdings, over $18 million in equity. Then he shorted it. He wasn't the first, but he was among the fastest. Within seconds, other hedge funds followed suit. Algorithms triggered. Sell walls rose and collapsed in milliseconds. By the time Blake reached for his whiskey again, AirVantage's market cap had dropped nearly $120 million, and it wasn't even 9:30 a.m. yet. He sat back, let out a slow, involuntary whistle. "Holy shit," he muttered. Across the aisle, another passenger, older in a gray suit, leaned over. "What?" Blake didn't answer. He just turned his phone slightly, revealing the ticker and its nosedive. The man frowned. "That's a crash." Blake nodded. And it just started. Meanwhile, in first class, Ava reclined her seat slightly. She hadn't moved since the call, but her stillness had taken on a new quality. It wasn't retreat. It was reign. She didn't need to pace, or gesture, or raise her voice. The world moved because she had moved. A woman 3 rows back opened her finance app and gasped. "They're saying Moreland's pulling funds." A man whispered to his seatmate. "She's the one from that video. The boarding gate, that was her." The realization was spreading like ink on silk. Even those who hadn't heard her speak were beginning to understand her voice. Chelsea, meanwhile, had vanished again. The new flight attendant assigned to first class looked nervous, unsure of how to interact with 1A. She asked if Ava needed anything. Water, perhaps? Tea? Ava declined with a gentle shake of the head. She wasn't thirsty. Not yet. In business class, Blake opened a new message thread to his boss. He typed, "Suggest full Avent exit." Moreland just torched them in flight. The reply was immediate. "Jesus, how bad?" Blake responded with a screenshot. 4.3% pre-open and free-falling. "She's on this flight. This is a purge." His phone buzzed again. A colleague, then another. News alerts began trickling in faster now. AirVantage exec team silent after pre-market dip. Rumors of major shareholder sell-off trigger panic. Code black. Analysts speculate Moreland move. He looked up again. That curtain suddenly felt paper-thin, like the power sitting in 1A was bleeding into the entire cabin. He leaned back and whispered under his breath, "She's not just someone. She was the storm." The flight had barely passed the halfway mark when the cabin lights flickered ever so slightly. A blink most passengers ignored. But not Ava. She recognized the signal. 30 seconds later, a whisper of tension moved through the plane like static before a lightning strike. The cockpit door opened. Not wide, just enough. A man in a navy blazer stepped out, his epaulets marked not for flight command, but internal authority. Tall, tightly groomed, his face flushed with urgency under a polished calm. Daniel Reese, chief purser of AirVantage Airlines, wasn't often summoned mid-flight. But this was no ordinary deviation. He didn't hesitate, didn't scan the cabin. His eyes locked on 1A the moment he emerged. Ava didn't move. She knew the choreography already. He approached with deliberate strides, weaving past wide-eyed passengers who instinctively pulled their limbs inward, sensing something sacred or dangerous was unfolding. Daniel stopped directly beside her. Then, he bent. Not a bow, not a nod. A full, unflinching kneel. Gasps fluttered through the air like a gasp of wind through dry leaves. A flight attendant at the galley dropped a spoon. The businessman across the aisle cursed under his breath. Daniel's knees touched the floor. "I deeply, deeply apologize, Miss Moreland," he said, voice cracking on the second syllable of her name. Ava didn't speak. She merely looked down at him, her face unreadable. Somewhere in row 4, someone whispered, "Miss Moreland?" A few phones lit up, not filming but searching, tapping, clicking, connecting names to faces, trying to piece it together. And then the whisper wave broke into a full realization. The woman they had watched get humiliated at the gate. The woman whose presence was questioned, whose bag was rifled through, whose grandmother's photograph was nearly stomped on, was not just a Moreland. She was the Moreland. Not just a shareholder, not just an heiress. She was a sitting executive director with veto power on the executive structure of AirVantage Airlines. A position rarely used, one only triggered during governance emergencies. A code black authority. And they'd watched her get treated like a stowaway. Daniel, still kneeling, pulled a thin folder from his inner jacket. A red wax seal marked the cover. The top page was trembling in his grip. "The board sent immediate resolution," he continued. "They've already approved the action. We're in full compliance with your directive." Ava raised an eyebrow. "Which directive?" Daniel swallowed. "The executive restructuring order. You invoked section 12.6. His throat bobbed. "Effective immediately." A pause. Then Ava leaned forward slightly, just enough to look him directly in the eye. Her voice was a scalpel wrapped in velvet. "Are you aware of what that section triggers, Mr. Reese?" Daniel nodded slowly. "It overrides our internal hierarchy, including the Chief Experience Officer, the Chief of Staff, and the current Director of Crew Operations. Meaning," he lowered his eyes again, "meaning you've removed them." A full beat of silence. Then Ava said softly, "Good." She reclined back in her seat. Daniel remained still. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. The woman beside Ava crossed her arms, as if hiding the fact that she had earlier whispered, "She doesn't look like a first-class flyer." A young man in row 2 had already opened Slack on his laptop, trying to type what he was witnessing but unable to find words that didn't sound like fiction. Daniel rose only when Ava nodded. He stood slowly, straightening his blazer, his hands trembling at the sides. "Your message has been delivered to the board and executive council. I await further instruction." Ava didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned her head toward the window. Outside, clouds shifted below them, blank, impartial, infinite. "Has Chelsea Miller been removed from duty?" she asked. Daniel froze, then nodded. "As of 10 minutes ago, her badge access has been revoked mid-flight. She's been escorted to the lower galley, and her supervisor, on suspension pending investigation." Ava's expression remained unchanged. "Send a message to legal," she added, "that my family's name is never to be mishandled in corporate operations again. Draft a clause. Insert it into your annual compliance report. I'll review the language personally." Daniel's voice was almost a whisper. "Yes, ma'am." Then he hesitated. "May I offer something?" Ava turned to face him fully. "Speak." He took a breath. "We've had crises, incidents, PR missteps, but never this." He looked at her, not with fear, but something closer to awe. "They said you never leave New York, that your boardroom is your battlefield." "I didn't leave it," Ava said coolly. "I brought it with me." Daniel closed his mouth. He nodded, bowed slightly again, and retreated toward the cockpit, his gait no longer confident, but humbled. When he disappeared behind the curtain, a new silence settled over the cabin. This one wasn't cold. It was electric. Passengers whispered her name with reverence now. The same passengers who, just an hour ago, had dismissed her as an intruder, who had chuckled or looked away. Now they couldn't stop watching, not because they feared her, but because they believed her. She didn't need a uniform. She didn't need volume. She had moved tectonic plates, quietly, deliberately, and with devastating clarity. Ava picked up her glass of water, took a slow sip. She was no longer the woman in 1A. She was the axis the entire cabin now revolved around. Below deck, where the hum of engines drowned out human sound, Chelsea Miller sat alone in the crew jump seat, knees pulled tightly together, hands clenched in her lap. Her perfect bun was coming undone. Her lipstick had faded. Her entire body sat stiff and stunned, as if denying that anything beyond routine turbulence had just occurred. She stared blankly at the bulkhead wall across from her. The flight had not ended. The sky outside was still pale and endless. But for Chelsea, the world had already changed. The quiet arrival of Daniel Reese 15 minutes earlier had been brief but brutal. No shouting, no argument. Just a sealed envelope, a revoked security badge, and 3 words whispered coldly, "You're done." He didn't need to elaborate. The email had already been sent. The board had already signed off. Chelsea had blinked, tried to protest. "Wait, at least let me speak to—" "You've already spoken," Daniel had interrupted. "Every action you took at Gate 14 was recorded. Every word, every glance. The board reviewed it all. There is no appeal." She opened her mouth again, but Daniel simply turned and walked away. The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. She wanted to believe it wasn't real, that this was overreaction, that she could explain. But then the first text came through on her personal phone. Not from the airline, from her sister. "Chelsea, are you okay? What happened? You're trending." Chelsea's hands trembled as she opened her social feed. It was all there, the video of her confrontation with Ava, the commentary, the side-by-side breakdowns of her expression and Ava's calm composure. Captioned screenshots. Think pieces, hashtags, #Gate14, #Cotton Dress, #The Woman in 1A, #Chelsea Miller. She tapped into one post with over 600,000 views already, a still image of Ava's boarding pass in her hand, and Chelsea mid-sentence. "Economy is that way." She looked like a villain. No, not like. She was the villain. She scrolled. Another clip. This time, Ava's card case opening. The pine tree emblem catching the light. The old man bowing. Chelsea swallowed hard. The comments burned. "You messed with a Moreland? LMAOO, your career's over." I'd kneel too. That's not just wealth. That's empire-level power. Imagine telling her to go to economy. She clicked out, tossed the phone into her tote. It clattered against an untouched bottle of water. No one came to check on her. No one offered a word. Back in the first-class cabin, Ava hadn't shifted once. She sat reclined, hands resting gently on the armrests. Her face a portrait of still serenity. But beneath that stillness, the storm had passed and left behind scorched earth. Daniel returned, now more composed. He stopped at 1A with the kind of cautious respect reserved for judges and monarchs. He didn't speak right away. Ava glanced at him, cool and measured. "It's done?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Effective immediately. All credentials revoked. She's been removed from the active crew list. HR and legal will follow up within the hour." Ava gave no reaction. No nod of approval. No flicker of satisfaction. Just silence. Daniel cleared his throat gently. "Would you like her brought up for an apology?" The words hung there. Several passengers turned, sensing the weight of that offer. The moment, the temptation, a public reckoning, a performance of regret, a spectacle of justice. Ava didn't blink. "No," she said. Her voice, though soft, landed like a stone. Daniel shifted. "Understood." A beat passed. Then Ava said, "This is just the start." The words were quiet, but in them, the room froze. A woman in row 2 exhaled audibly. A man clutched his phone a little tighter. They all knew what she meant. This wasn't about one flight attendant. This was about an entire system that let Chelsea become Chelsea, that trained her, promoted her, rewarded her for behavior polished into cruelty. Ava wasn't here for revenge. She was here for reform. Daniel bowed slightly. "We'll await your guidance on next steps. You'll receive them before landing," Ava replied. "Have legal prepare the internal briefing for all senior crew by EOD, mandatory attendance. Include the clause about public humiliation protocol. I want it worded clearly. Classism and profiling are grounds for immediate termination." "Yes, ma'am." She turned her gaze back to the clouds. The conversation was over. Daniel departed silently. In his wake, first class remained hushed. The passengers who had watched her get demeaned at the gate now avoided her eyes, not out of shame, but reverence, fear, respect. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. But in that stillness, she had created a ripple effect more brutal than shouting ever could. Somewhere far below, the market continued to plummet. Moreland's exit had triggered 5 other firms to adjust their holding. AirVantage's CEO had locked himself in a conference call bunker, desperate for answers. And Chelsea Miller, sitting in a cramped fold-down seat near the galley, was staring at her now locked employee portal. Access denied, pension pending review. No farewell, no explanation. Just silence, ruthless, elegant. The moment the market bell rang on Wall Street, it began. No opening fanfare, no champagne pop for a record day. Just the thundering sound of cascading numbers and evaporating equity. The headline hit the financial feeds at 9:31 a.m. ST. AirVantage hemorrhages $570 million in first 45 minutes of trading. Unconfirmed Moreland equity action suspected. At 9:32, 2 anchors at Bloomberg paused mid-segment as red flashed across their touchscreens. "Breaking news," one said, jaw clenched. AirVantage is down 6.3% in the opening minutes. Sources say a strategic liquidation was triggered by an institutional investor, potentially Moreland Equity. The second anchor frowned. Moreland? They own almost 12%. At 9:34, traders in Singapore, London, and Frankfurt had already caught the scent. Hedge funds across the globe scrambled for analysis, even as sell orders flooded in faster than bots could handle. AirVantage's ticker, $AVNT, didn't just dip, it nosedived. In San Francisco, a tech CEO checking his portfolio over breakfast dropped his espresso. In Dubai, a sovereign fund manager began liquidating ancillary aviation positions. By 9:45, over $570 million in market capitalization had vanished from AirVantage's books. And Ava Moreland? She was still sitting quietly in seat 1A, sipping warm water with lemon, while a digital storm tore through the financial world she partly owned. She hadn't opened her phone again. She didn't need to, because she'd already done the only thing required. One line, one tap, one authority. At that very moment, inside a sealed conference room 3,000 miles away, Graham Kessler, CEO of AirVantage Airlines, stared at a single-line email flashing across his laptop screen. It was from the Moreland Equity Executive Oversight Liaison. Subject, executive adjustment, effective immediately. Body, you've lost your seat. No salutation, no explanation, no emotion. Just the cold declaration of reality. And the end of his career. Graham's hands hovered over the keyboard, then clenched into fists. This couldn't be real. He clicked through to his admin portal. Access denied. He reached for his intercom. "Lisa, get me compliance." No response. He opened Slack. Nothing. Logged out. His screen went black, then rebooted. When it returned, it read, "This device is now property of the board." He was no longer CEO. Not fired. Removed. Silently. Immediately. Irreversibly. Across the room, his assistant stood awkwardly, holding a stack of printed earnings notes. She had just seen the email, too. I think you're supposed to leave the room, sir," she whispered. Graham didn't reply. He didn't shout. He just stood slowly, picked up his blazer, and walked toward the elevator like a man heading to his own funeral. The word spread fast. From executive floors to janitorial lounges. From private group chats to mainstream Twitter. Moreland just cleaned house. CEO gone. Board's next. Who the hell is in seat 1A? The shock wasn't just that Ava had moved. It was how. From a plane, in the sky, without ever standing up. The power wasn't in the wealth. It was in the precision. She didn't pull strings. She cut them. Back on board Flight 826, passengers were glued to their devices. News alerts piled up faster than coffee orders. A man across from Ava nudged his wife and whispered, "She just cost them $500 million. From here, from that seat." His wife glanced over, then whispered back, "She didn't cost them anything. They earned it." Ava said nothing. Her gaze was steady on the clouds. A flight attendant passed by and nearly stumbled when her screen lit up with the news. She turned, made eye contact with Ava, and gave a stiff, terrified nod. Ava simply blinked. 3 rows back, the businessman from earlier, Blake, was still monitoring the financial carnage. He watched the market tank and began typing feverishly. "CEO officially ousted. Confirmed. Ava Moreland moved from within aircraft. Full vote bypass. AirVantage in freefall." His hands shook as he hit send. He wasn't scared for the company anymore. He was scared of her, not in fear of cruelty. In fear of her clarity. Back at corporate HQ, the emergency board session was already underway. Ava's legal rep appeared on screen. Calm, buttoned up, wielding phrases like fiduciary breach, class-based discrimination risk, and reputational hemorrhage. In the background, Ava's message played on loop. "This is just the start." And it was. AirVantage's legal counsel resigned within the hour. Their chief of people stepped down before noon. By the time Flight 826 began its descent, AirVantage was trending #1 worldwide for all the wrong reasons. Ava didn't celebrate. She didn't even exhale. Because this wasn't a victory. It was a recalibration. The sky had rules, and now they would be rewritten. By her. For everyone who had been asked, "Are you sure you belong here?" She closed her eyes for a brief moment, not to rest, but to remember. Her grandmother standing in the Alabama heat, telling the girl version of Ava, "One day they'll say your silence was louder than their screams." That day had come. The cabin was still, save for the gentle rustling of newspapers and the occasional clink of a coffee spoon against porcelain. Yet, underneath the veneer of calm, the air thrummed with tension. People were no longer whispering about Ava Moreland. They were watching her, not with suspicion or even curiosity now, but with reverent awareness, like museum patrons standing in front of an original that had somehow come to life. Every eye in first class flicked to 1A with cautious admiration. But Ava? She didn't look up. She was reviewing something on her phone, though not the news, not the market fallout, not the videos or the memes or the avalanche of headlines now circling the globe. Instead, she was reading a PDF file titled simply, "Passenger Dignity Charter, Draft 1989. Author, Evelyn Moreland." Ava's thumb hovered above the final page. It had yellowed from scanning. The watermark was old and faded. The signature line at the bottom was blank. No airline had ever signed it. Not one. It had been written 3 decades ago by a woman who foresaw what would become a growing virus in corporate behavior. Disrespect baked into systems, polished into training modules, and signed off as policy. Profiling was never about suspicion. It was about pattern recognition through bias, Evelyn had written. And bias, when dressed in a uniform, becomes law unless someone rewrites the handbook. Ava's jaw tightened. Now she was that someone. She tapped her screen once, then again, adding her own signature under her grandmother's in smooth cursive script. The charter was no longer a draft. It was a directive. As the aircraft began its final approach, Daniel Reese returned to first class. This time, his demeanor had shifted. Not nervous, not deferential, but ready. Ready to listen. Ready to learn. He crouched slightly beside Ava's seat, careful not to speak first. She looked up, calm, steady. Her voice was low, deliberate. This isn't about revenge. Daniel nodded once. Yes, ma'am. It's about rewriting the manual. Yes, ma'am. She handed him her phone. On the screen was the newly signed Ava's charter. The header glowed in bold. A mandate for passenger dignity. Your airline will be the first to sign this, she said. Daniel read through the clauses quickly. His eyebrows rose with each line. Clause 1. No passenger shall be profiled or downgraded based on attire, race, perceived wealth, accent, or appearance. Clause 2. Any instance of discrimination by staff will be subject to instant investigation and public acknowledgement. Clause 3. Executive teams will undergo biannual audits for class-based behavior metrics. Clause 4. Every senior crew member must complete immersive empathy training co-led by diverse civilians, not corporate trainers. Daniel looked up, stunned. This is unprecedented. No, Ava replied. It's overdue. But legal has already been briefed, she interrupted. I spoke with your incoming CEO this morning. They agree in principle. All they need is your commitment to enforce this on board. He hesitated for just a breath, then nodded again. You have it. Have it in writing. She handed him a stylus. He signed the screen. Done. Ava took the device back, pressed send, and a copy was instantly forwarded to the entire AirVantage Executive Board, the FAA Compliance Archive, and 4 major airline watchdog organizations. Daniel exhaled slowly. Was this always the plan? Ava looked out the window for a long moment before answering. No, she said, but it's always been the opportunity. She paused. My grandmother wrote that charter 30 years ago. No one wanted to put their name on it back then. They were afraid it would signal guilt or weakness. And now? Daniel asked softly. Now it signals leadership. Across the aisle, a woman finally spoke. Aloud. For the first time in hours. I just read the document, she said, holding up her phone. My brother's a VP at Global Air. I'm sending this to him. They need this. Ava turned her head slightly. I don't want it shared for credit. The woman nodded. Understood. For change, then. Yes, Ava said. For change. Another passenger chimed in. Will this be public? It already is. Ava opened her email app, tapped twice, and scheduled the official press release to launch the moment the plane's wheels touched down. The headline read, Moreland Charter signed at 30,000 feet. A new era for passenger rights begins. Beneath it, a scanned image of the charter, 2 signatures at the bottom, Evelyn Moreland, Ava Moreland. Daniel stood, smoothing his blazer. If I may say, Miss Moreland, he began, I think this will outlast you. Ava gave a faint smile. I hope so. In the galley, flight attendants were now reading the same email, eyes wide. Some were frightened. Some were moved. One of them, just 21, fresh out of training, whispered, I want to work for that company. The plane began its descent. The captain's voice came over the intercom. We'll be landing shortly. On behalf of all of us, thank you for flying with AirVantage today. He didn't mention Ava by name. He didn't need to. Everyone on board knew who had changed the air itself, not just on this flight, but in the skies beyond. And when the wheels kissed the runway at exactly 10:58 a.m., the charter went live. The earth didn't shake, but systems did. And from one seat, one voice, and one long-delayed signature, the future had begun to rewrite itself. The wheels touched down with a whisper, not a roar. The landing gear kissed the tarmac so softly that it felt as though the aircraft itself was paying its respects. Inside, there was no applause. No cheers, just a deep, collective exhale. The silence was sacred now. Passengers remained seated even after the plane taxied to the gate. No one stood to grab overhead bags. No one rushed to beat the crowd. They all knew who would move first, and none of them wanted to move before her. Ava Moreland unbuckled her seatbelt in one smooth motion. She didn't rise immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes for a brief moment, anchoring herself to something deeper than applause or headlines. Her grandmother's voice echoed again, faint, firm. When it's done, don't wait for recognition. Walk away. Let the world sit with the weight of what you've shifted. She opened her eyes. Then she stood. There was no command, no announcement. Yet the cabin responded instinctively. A businessman in row 2 stood and stepped back, opening the aisle. A woman in row 4 nudged her husband and whispered, "Let her go first." Even the teenager from business class, who had once giggled over a video, now stood, eyes lowered, as if ashamed to meet her gaze. The aisle cleared. One by one, the first-class passengers created a path, not because protocol demanded it, but because presence did. Ava gathered her leather bag, slung it gently over her shoulder, and walked forward. Each step was silent, intentional. Chelsea was nowhere to be seen. Daniel Reese stood near the cockpit, his hands clasped in front of him. As Ava approached, he bowed slightly, just once, and whispered, "Thank you, Miss Moreland." She offered a nod in return, nothing more. Then she stepped through the aircraft door and into the jet bridge. The hallway was flooded with light, a stark contrast to the cool dimness of the cabin. On the other end, behind the glass of the terminal, a crowd had already gathered. Reporters, cameramen, airline executives, curious travelers. Some held signs, some held questions, all held breath. The world had learned quickly. Word of Ava's mid-flight command had spread like wildfire. Moreland's charter was trending in 15 countries. Stock analysts were calling it the most significant ethical intervention in corporate aviation in decades. Security agents stood in tight formation, ready to escort her. But Ava didn't walk toward them. She turned left, toward the service exit. The side gate wasn't marked for VIPs. It wasn't the glamorous way out. No red carpet, no flashbulbs. Just a quiet corridor meant for baggage handlers, overnight crews, and those who knew their power didn't need a spotlight. A young security officer blinked as she approached. "Miss Moreland, that exit's—" "I know," she said gently. He paused, then stepped aside. She descended a narrow stairwell. The echo of her footsteps bounced gently off concrete walls. The hallway smelled faintly of jet fuel and lemon disinfectant. At the end of the corridor, a single figure waited. Tall, dark suit, hands clasped. A man in his late 40s, hair graying at the temples, posture military straight. Michael Tran, interim CEO of AirVantage Airlines. He didn't speak when she arrived, didn't extend a hand. Instead, he bowed. Deep, controlled, sincere. It wasn't the bow of apology. It was the bow of a soldier before a general. When he rose, his voice was low. "I wanted to thank you in person." Ava studied him for a moment. "You'll sign it?" she asked. "I already did." Ava raised an eyebrow. He smiled. "The charter went to every major airline within the hour, but it started with my pen. The board understands." "Do you?" she asked softly. He nodded, no hesitation. "I do, and I will make sure they do too." A long pause passed between them, filled not with tension, but shared responsibility. Ava finally spoke again. "Then make it matter. Not for me, not for PR, for the crew. The ones who get overlooked, just like the passengers do." "I will," Michael said. "We'll rebuild better. Because of you." Ava gave him one last nod. Then she walked past him, toward a waiting black sedan parked beside the freight ramp. No paparazzi, no fans. Just a single driver in a Navy uniform, holding the door open. Before she stepped in, she turned her head slightly, glancing back one last time. Michael stood exactly where she'd left him, hands behind his back, watching her leave. Not as a CEO to a shareholder, but as a student to a teacher. The car door closed behind her. It drove off slowly, blending into the traffic beyond the terminal. And just like that, the woman who had dismantled a power structure at 30,000 feet was gone. No victory speech, no media statement, no selfies, only legacy. Inside the terminal, a monitor looped the airline's welcome message over and over, oblivious to the transformation happening behind the scenes. A few passengers exiting Flight 826 stood together silently, watching the news scroll on their phones. One of them, a young woman who had said nothing during the entire flight, turned to the others and whispered. She changed everything, and all she did was stand up. The sky above Los Angeles that morning was a soft, open canvas, blush blue, feathered with the early wisps of noon clouds. It stretched endlessly, indifferent and expansive, like time itself. Ava Moreland stood beside the edge of the tarmac, just past the freight loading zone where her car had dropped her briefly for privacy. Her heels made no sound against the concrete. Her cotton dress fluttered faintly in the breeze, elegant without effort. She looked up, not in longing or in reflection, but in affirmation. It had always been the sky, that unreachable thing, that boundless idea, the place where people were told they could aim, but never arrive. The sky's the limit, they used to say, as if that wasn't a limit at all, as if that didn't still cage entire lives with invisible ceilings. Behind her, Flight 826 had fully deboarded. The gate area now buzzed with reporters, executives, security, and passengers who still didn't fully understand what they had witnessed, but others did. Because as Ava turned to leave the tarmac for the final time that day, a soft sound broke through the noise. A digital one, tinny but emotional. It came from the phone of a teenager standing just beyond the checkpoint. He had been on the flight. He had watched her, recorded her, at first, for spectacle. But now, he was live. His video was being streamed to over 200,000 viewers. And he was pointing the camera at Ava as she paused, turned back, and did something she hadn't done once since the flight began. She spoke to the crowd. No stage, no podium, no script, just her voice. Soft, steady, truthful. "This wasn't about me," she said. "This was about every woman who's been told she didn't belong, and about the world that let that lie breathe for too long." The words hit like a tuning fork, vibrating not in volume, but in frequency. The kind of frequency that shook something loose in anyone who had ever been made to shrink themselves for the comfort of others. People froze. The camera's comment section exploded. "I'm crying. She's talking about me. This woman is history." Another passenger nearby raised their phone, filming from a different angle. Soon, there were half a dozen live streams. She hadn't planned it. She hadn't dressed for it. She hadn't even raised her voice. But the moment belonged to her, not because she took it, because she embodied it. Behind the digital screens, in offices and classrooms, on subways and sidewalks, women watched her and stood a little taller. Young girls who had never seen someone like them own a room, let alone an airline, watched with wide eyes, suddenly rewriting what was possible. One woman, still seated at a terminal lounge gate, wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered to no one in particular, "She didn't need wings. She was the flight." As Ava turned to go, her words still echoed through devices, through hearts, through boardrooms already scrambling to issue DEI statements they hadn't cared about the day before. She walked with the same quiet grace she had boarded with. But now, the world knew the weight of her walk, and in her wake, change followed. The Ava Charter had already been downloaded 3 million times. Petitions had launched urging every major airline to adopt it. Several CEOs had issued public apologies for past incidents that mirrored Gate 14. And Evelyn Moreland's once-forgotten name was now trending. #grandmother of Thesky, in tribute to the woman who had planted a seed in a world not yet ready to grow it. Until Ava. A few hours later, Ava arrived back in New York. No welcome party, no media frenzy. She walked out of JFK with a single suitcase and a phone buzzing endlessly with missed calls, emails, press requests, invitations to speak. She answered none. Instead, she went home, to a quiet brownstone in Harlem, where her grandmother's photo still sat framed beside the fireplace. She made herself tea, sat on the couch, and opened her journal. At the top of the next page, she wrote only one sentence. The sky was never the limit. It was the beginning. Then she underlined it. Once, twice. She closed the journal and leaned back, letting silence wrap around her like armor. Tomorrow, the world would spin faster. Tomorrow, someone else would walk onto a plane and be seen differently. Tomorrow, a flight attendant would hesitate before saying, "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" And maybe they'd choose a different sentence. Maybe they'd choose silence. Maybe they'd choose respect. But whatever they chose, they would do so knowing there were eyes watching now, and not just Ava's. Millions of eyes. Changed eyes. Inspired eyes. For the first time, the sky had been cracked open, not just for Ava Moreland, But for all the women, all the people, all the voices who'd been told to wait their turn, or not show up at all, and now the runway belonged to them.